The heat in Genoa City wasn't just from the late August sun, it was the kind of thick, electric heat that rolled in before a storm, the kind that made tempers shorter, secrets heavier, and truths impossible to bury. And this time, the storm had a name: Summer Newman. The revolving doors of Newman Enterprises spun open with purpose. Summer stepped inside like she owned the air itself. Her heels struck the marble floor in crisp, deliberate rhythm. She wore white, fitting for the season, ironic for the reason. Her face was calm, but her eyes held fire, the kind of fire that burned quietly before it consumed everything. Victoria noticed her first. Summer? Heads turned, conversation stopped. Nick froze mid-sentence, and Phyllis, who had been standing near the reception desk arguing about a delayed investor meeting, went completely still, because a mother always knows when something is wrong, and something was very wrong. Summer didn't smile, she didn't hug anyone, she didn't even blink. "I'm not here for small talk," she said evenly. "I'm here for the truth." Phyllis recovered first. "Oh, honey," she began, forcing warmth into her voice. "You didn't tell me you were coming back today. I would have—" Summer cut her off. "You would have what? Prepared a lie?" The room fell silent. Nick stepped forward. "Okay, what's going on?" Summer reached into her designer bag and pulled out a large manila envelope. It looked ordinary. It wasn't. She placed it on the glass conference table in the center of the room. "I ran another test." Phyllis's face drained of color. "What test?" Nick asked cautiously. Summer's eyes never left her mother. "A DNA test." The question had haunted Summer since childhood. It lingered in sideways glances, in whispered arguments she'd overheard through bedroom doors, in the tension that snapped like static between Phyllis and the Newmans whenever her paternity was mentioned. Nick had raised her, loved her, protected her, but biology had always cast a shadow. Years ago, tests had confirmed Nick as her father. Case closed. Except it never felt closed. Not really. And when inconsistencies began to surface, dates that didn't line up, records that didn't match, medical histories that contradicted one another, Summer's instincts kicked in. She'd inherited many things from her mother: curiosity, stubbornness, and the inability to let things go. So she started digging, quietly, carefully, until she found something she couldn't ignore. "You didn't need another test," Phyllis said quickly. Too quickly. The first one was accurate, completely legitimate. Summer tilted her head. "Was it?" Nick's jaw tightened. "Phyllis!" Phyllis forced a laugh. "Oh, come on, we've been through this. This is ancient history." "No," Summer replied, her voice sharp. "It's my history." She opened the envelope. Inside were official documents, lab seals, signatures, proof. "I went to a completely independent facility. No connections, no influence, no manipulation." The last word hung in the air like an accusation. Phyllis felt it like a blade. "Summer, you're overreacting," she said, her tone shifting from defensive to desperate. "Why would you even think—" "Because I found out the original lab technician who handled my first test disappeared from Genoa City 2 weeks after the results came in." Nick's eyes snapped toward Phyllis. "You told me that was coincidence," he said quietly. Phyllis swallowed. It was. Summer slid the top page across the table. "Read it." Nick picked up the paper. He read silently at first. Then his face changed. Confusion? Shock? Disbelief. "What does it say?" Victoria demanded. Nick looked up slowly. "It says, I'm not her biological father." The room seemed to tilt. Phyllis stepped backward as if the ground had dropped beneath her. "That's impossible," she whispered. Summer's voice was steady. "No, it's not." Nick turned to Phyllis. "Tell me this is wrong." Phyllis's eyes darted around the room, calculating, scrambling. There must be a mistake. Tests get mixed up all the time." Summer shook her head. "I had it run twice." Nick's voice broke slightly. "Phyllis." Tears welled in her eyes. "I did what I had to do," she said softly. The confession was barely audible, but it shattered everything. Who is he? Nick asked. Phyllis hesitated. Summer answered instead. I already know. All eyes turned to her again. She took a breath. It's not someone new. It's not some random stranger. Her gaze locked onto her mother. It's someone you've been protecting for years. Phyllis closed her eyes. Don't, she whispered. Summer's voice rose. It's him, isn't it? The name hung unspoken, but everyone felt it. A man from the past. A man whose history with Phyllis had been explosive, complicated, dangerous. You were involved with him around the same time you were with Nick, Summer continued. The timelines overlap. Nick's face hardened as realization dawned. You told me that was over before we... Phyllis snapped. It was complicated. Summer's expression cracked for the first time. All my life I defended you. I fought for you. I believed you. Tears streamed down her cheeks now. And you lied to me. Phyllis stepped forward, her voice trembling. I was trying to protect you. From what? Summer demanded. From him, Phyllis shouted. From what he could do to you. Nick's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? Phyllis hesitated again. Then the truth spilled out. He didn't want a child. He made that very clear. When I found out I was pregnant, he told me it would ruin everything. His reputation, his empire, his life. Summer's heart pounded. So you chose Nick. I chose stability, Phyllis corrected. I chose a father who would love you. Nick's expression twisted with hurt. You let me believe she was mine. You are her father, Phyllis insisted, in every way that matters. But not the way that counts, Summer said quietly. The doors behind them opened, as if summoned by destiny itself, and there he stood, tall, impeccable, controlled. He'd clearly heard enough to understand what was happening. You should have told her years ago, he said coolly. Summer's breath caught. Phyllis looked like she might collapse. Nick stared at him in disbelief. You, Nick said, voice laced with anger. The man's eyes met Summer's, and for the first time there was something unguarded there. Regret. Yes, he said. I'm your biological father. Summer felt like the world had narrowed to a single point. All the whispers, all the tension, all the unexplained hostility between her mother and this man over the years. It made sense now. You knew, she said. He didn't deny it. I suspected, he replied. Phyllis told me she handled it. Phyllis gasped. You didn't want involvement. I didn't want scandal, he corrected sharply. That's different. Nick stepped between them. You let me raise her. You let me build a life believing she was mine. The man's jaw tightened. You loved her. That was never in question. That's not the point, Nick exploded. Summer raised her hand. Stop. They fell silent. She turned to her biological father. Why now? He met her gaze. Because secrets don't stay buried forever, and because you deserve to hear it from me. Her voice trembled. Say it, a beat. Then, I am your father. Phyllis couldn't hold herself together anymore. She sank into a chair, sobbing. I was scared, she cried. I didn't know what would happen if the truth came out. I didn't know if he'd fight for custody, or reject you, or destroy us. Summer looked at her mother with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. You took away my choice. I gave you a better life. You don't know that. The pain in the room was suffocating. Nick stepped back, struggling to process the betrayal. He had lost something intangible, not his love for Summer, never that, but something primal, something fundamental. Summer gathered the documents again. There's more, she said. Everyone looked at her. The test didn't just confirm who my father is. Her biological father stiffened. It also confirmed a genetic marker. Phyllis frowned. What marker? Summer's eyes darkened. A hereditary condition. Silence. The man's expression changed. He knew. You didn't tell her, Summer whispered. Phyllis looked confused. Tell her what? Summer's hands shook. I've been having symptoms. That's why I did the test in the first place. I needed my full medical history. Nick's face went pale. What symptoms? Vision issues, migraines, nerve pain. The man closed his eyes briefly. It runs in my family, he admitted quietly. Summer's voice cracked. You let me grow up without knowing I was at risk. Phyllis looked from one to the other in horror. You knew about this? She demanded. He nodded once. You didn't think? Phyllis screamed. The revelation shifted the battlefield. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about health, future, life itself. Summer felt suddenly exhausted. I don't know what this means yet, she said softly, but I'm meeting with a specialist next week. Nick moved to her side instantly. I'm going with you. She squeezed his hand. Thank you, Dad. The word was intentional, deliberate. Her biological father noticed. A flicker of pain crossed his face, but he didn't argue, because fatherhood wasn't just DNA, and for the first time, he understood that. The meeting ended without resolution. Phyllis tried to speak to Summer privately. Summer refused. Nick left with his daughter, protective and furious, and the man who had hidden in plain sight for decades remained standing in the now empty lobby of Newman Enterprises, staring at the space where his daughter had stood. His daughter, the word felt foreign, earned and unearned at the same time. Later that night, Phyllis sat alone in her suite. The summer heat pressed against the windows. She replayed every choice she'd made, every lie she'd told. She had convinced herself it was maternal instinct, survival, love. But maybe it had also been control. She had wanted to control the narrative, control the outcome, control the risk. And now she had lost everything. Across town, Summer stood on the balcony of the Newman ranch house. The sky was streaked with gold and violet. Nick stepped beside her. You okay? No, she admitted, but I will be. He nodded. I'm sorry. For what? For not questioning things harder. She shook her head. You were my father every day that mattered. That doesn't change. His eyes filled. Nothing could. She leaned against him. But I need answers, she said. From him. Nick's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I'll support you, even if I don't like it. A small, sad smile. That's what dads do. The next morning, Summer requested a private meeting, just her and the man whose blood ran in her veins. No Phyllis, no Nick, no interruptions. When she arrived, he was already waiting. For once, he looked unsure. You wanted to see me? She closed the door behind her. Yes. A long silence stretched between them. Then she said the words that would change everything again. If I'm going to face this condition, if I'm going to understand who I am, I need the whole truth. He nodded slowly. You'll have it. But in Genoa City, the whole truth always came with consequences. And as summer burned brighter outside, the storm inside this family was just beginning. Because DNA might reveal biology. But it also uncovers secrets. And once those secrets come to light, there is no going back. Summer is back with DNA evidence. Part 2. Phyllis uncovers the truth about her real father. Y&R spoilers. The office was too quiet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Genoa City, sunlight cutting sharp angles across polished mahogany. The air felt clinical, controlled, like the man standing across from Summer, her biological father. For years she had called him by his first name, respected him, challenged him, distrusted him, but never once had she imagined calling him Dad. And now she wasn't sure she ever would. You said you'd tell me everything, Summer began, folding her arms. He nodded once. I will. No half-truths, no strategic omissions. I don't want the corporate version. A faint, almost ironic smile flickered across his face. You sound like your mother. That's not a compliment today. Silence. Then he exhaled. When your mother told me she was pregnant, I didn't believe her at first. We were volatile. Our relationship wasn't stable. That's a polite way of putting it, Summer replied. It was complicated. There's that word again. His jaw tightened, but he continued. I had just finalized a merger that put me in the public eye more than ever. Investors were watching, the board was watching. Any scandal would have been catastrophic. So I was a scandal. You were a liability, he corrected, then immediately regretted it. Summer's eyes hardened. That's how you saw me. That's how I saw the situation, he amended quickly. I was wrong. She searched his face for sincerity. And when she told you she was going to say the baby was Nick's? He hesitated. I didn't argue. The words landed like a punch. Across town, Phyllis wasn't spiraling anymore. She was planning. She had spent the entire night replaying his confession. The hereditary condition, the genetic marker, the fact that he had known. He hadn't just allowed a lie about paternity, he had withheld medical history. That crossed a line even Phyllis couldn't rationalize, so she did what she did best. She started digging. Her laptop glowed in the dim light of her suite as she accessed archived medical journals, corporate health disclosures, and old family records tied to his lineage. And then she found it. A research study from nearly 25 years ago. A private trial, funded quietly, settled quietly, participants bound by non-disclosure agreements. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't just a hereditary condition. It was a mutation that had been studied and buried. Why didn't you tell me this? She whispered to herself. Because the truth was worse than fear. The truth was choice. Back in the office, Summer paced. You said it runs in your family. Who else has it? My father did, he admitted. She stopped moving. What happened to him? He lost his sight by 50. The words echoed. Summer swallowed hard. And you? He didn't answer immediately. I've had symptoms, he said finally. Her breath caught. How bad? Manageable? So far? So far, she repeated sharply. He looked at her fully now. There are treatments in development, experimental therapies. Have you tried them? Yes. And a beat. They slow progression. They don't cure it. The room felt smaller. You were going to let me walk into this blind, she whispered. I thought if you never knew, I'd never prepare, never monitor, never protect myself. He didn't respond, because she was right. For the first time in years, Nick and Phyllis were on the same side. Anger, fear, protectiveness. They stood in the living room of the ranch house, tension thick between them, but aimed elsewhere. He knew about a genetic disorder and said nothing? Nick asked, incredulous. Phyllis nodded, her expression fierce. There's more. Nick frowned. More? She handed him a printed document. What am I looking at? A suppressed research initiative. Early trials tied to his family's DNA profile. They were studying the mutation decades ago. Nick scanned the page. And the trial was shut down after adverse effects. His eyes lifted slowly. What kind of adverse effects? Phyllis's voice dropped. Accelerated degeneration. Summer returned to the ranch just as Phyllis finished explaining. She sensed the shift immediately. What happened? She asked. Nick looked at her carefully. Your mom found something. Summer stiffened. What now? Phyllis approached cautiously, like nearing a wounded animal. Sweetheart, the condition, it's been studied before, by him. Summer's face drained. You knew about this? She asked her biological father later that evening, when she confronted him again, this time with documents in hand. He didn't look surprised. I was going to tell you. When? After my symptoms got worse? It wasn't that simple. There's that word again, she snapped. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration cracking his composure. The trial failed. People got worse. I shut it down. You buried it. I protected the company. And yourself. His silence confirmed it. But then he said something that shifted everything. You weren't supposed to inherit it? Summer blinked. That's not how genetics works. In most cases, no. But your specific marker, there was only a 50% chance. And I lost the coin toss? He stepped closer. No, there's more to it than chance. Her pulse quickened. What does that mean? He hesitated, and for the first time she saw genuine fear in his eyes. It means your DNA profile isn't identical to mine. The room went still. What are you saying? He exhaled slowly. The mutation expressed differently in you. Stronger. Earlier. Summer's stomach twisted. That doesn't answer my question. Another pause. Then, there may have been environmental triggers, her mind raced. From what? He looked away. The trial. Summer felt the world tilt again. You tested something while my mother was pregnant. It wasn't a question. His silence was answer enough. You said you didn't want involvement, she said, voice shaking, but you experimented anyway? It wasn't an experiment on you, he insisted. It was a treatment I was taking. We didn't know... You didn't know what? That it could affect a fetus? Phyllis's earlier panic suddenly made sense. The timeline, the urgency to claim Nick as the father. She hadn't just been afraid of scandal. She'd been afraid of exposure. You knew, Summer whispered, realization dawning. Mom knew. When Summer confronted Phyllis again, the truth spilled out in broken pieces. I didn't know all the details, Phyllis cried. I just knew he was undergoing treatments, experimental ones. When the symptoms started during my pregnancy, I panicked. What symptoms? You were born early, Phyllis admitted. There were complications. Summer felt dizzy. And you thought if he was named as the father, they'd connect the dots, Phyllis finished. That night, Summer couldn't sleep. Her entire sense of self felt unstable, not just who her father was, but how she had come into the world. Was she the result of love, of recklessness, of ambition, of science gone wrong? Nick sat with her in the dark kitchen. You don't have to carry this alone, he said. She stared at her reflection in the window. I don't even know what I'm carrying. He reached for her hand. You're still you. But what if this changes me? It doesn't. How can you be sure? Because I raised you. I know who you are. Tears filled her eyes again. Biology doesn't get to rewrite that. Meanwhile, her biological father sat alone in his office long after sunset. For decades, he had controlled narratives, managed crises, eliminated threats. But this wasn't a hostile takeover. This was his daughter, and he had failed her before she even took her first breath. He opened a secure file on his computer, medical records, trial data, personal notes. There was something he hadn't told her, not yet, because if the environmental trigger theory was correct, then her condition wasn't entirely inherited. It was accelerated, and that meant responsibility. His responsibility. The next morning, Summer stood stronger, angrier, clearer. She gathered both men in one room, Nick, and the man who shared her DNA. I'm done being reactive, she said firmly. If this condition is progressing, I need the best specialists, the best research, no more secrets. Her biological father nodded immediately. I'll fund anything you need. Nick added, and I'll be there. Every appointment. She looked between them. For once, you're going to work together. Neither man liked that idea, but neither refused. Because Summer wasn't asking, she was demanding. As they began coordinating consultations, one of the specialists reviewed her genetic profile. There was a pause during the call, a hesitation. Is something wrong? Summer asked. The doctor sounded careful. There's an anomaly. Her heart pounded. What kind of anomaly? It's rare, the doctor continued. But your DNA suggests mosaic expression? Summer frowned. Meaning? Meaning not all of your cells carry the mutation. Nick leaned forward. Is that good? It could be, the doctor replied. In some cases, mosaicism can slow progression, even halt it. Hope flickered. But the doctor wasn't finished. It also raises another question. Summer's breath caught. What question? A beat. Are we absolutely certain about both biological parents? The room went silent. Summer slowly turned her head toward Phyllis, because in Genoa City, DNA never tells just one story. And if one truth had been buried for decades, who's to say there wasn't another?